2024 is coming to an end, and it has been an interesting year for video games. For me personally, I beat 17 games this year, and honestly, that's kind of a record for me. I'm not somebody who's very good at beating games. If you look at any of my previous videos, I literally talk about games that I played, not games that I beat. And it all started with a challenge from Jen from Retro Rivals, where she said, if you beat Alice Madness Returns, I will play Fable 2. And then the ball just started rolling after I beat that game. And I think because it was the first game I beat this year, I judged it a little too harshly. And it was because I'm not used to pushing myself through games unless I really, really like it. And it kind of lit a fire under my ass. So these are the 17 games I played this year, and I would like to rank them with the S tier to D tier, instead of doing what I did in mid-year, where I was basically ranking them like 1 to whatever number. I have too many games, I like the other system better, so I'm going to change gears here, and I'm going to rank them whether they're S tier games, A, and so on. S tier being God tier, love the game. A being a great game, just not like God status, and so on and so forth. Obviously, this is a very subjective list. This is something that I am personally, like, my own opinion on it, okay? It's how I felt about the game. So, I'm ranking the games with a mix of how it was perceived, but mostly how I perceived it and how much I enjoyed it. So let's get started. Alright, very first up on my list is Astro Bot. This game won Game of the Year, and I think I understand why, and I'm very glad that a platformer finally got something like Game of the Year. I enjoyed the game thoroughly. Like most people, I didn't think it was some sort of, like, PlayStation advertisement. I really thought it was an homage to the franchises that they've built over the years, while making a really, like, kick-ass platformer. So I had a lot of fun with it. The music was charming, the characters were charming, it was very cutesy, some of the platforming was challenging. I'm not the biggest fan of like having to search for the robots, but it made it fun and challenging. It made it, the replayability, like, awesome. So I enjoyed the game very thoroughly. Now, with that being said, most people I think would rank this S tier because it was like, a lot of people were like, I've heard people saying that it's just as good, if not better, than Super Mario World. I'm gonna say I disagree. I feel like I missed something because although I loved the game, I had a lot of fun with it. I don't think it's Super Mario World territory. Now, I do have nostalgia goggles for that one, so that could be completely my own, like, issue there. So I'm going to rank this in an A tier. So it's not S tier to me. It sounds like it's S tier to a lot of other people, and I did thoroughly enjoy it a lot. I think it's got amazing level design. I love the Astro Bot character. I loved him back in the PSVR days. The demo, I'm glad that PlayStation has this character to kind of move forward with, but for me, Astro Bot is A tier. Next on my list is Life is Strange True Colors. I played this when I was trying to deal with some confusing, like, family stuff, and it was kind of the perfect game for that. I love the Life is Strange franchise. I don't think that's much of a secret. The first one is still my favorite, but Life is Strange True Colors was a really interesting game with a heavier story. I think a lot of them try to hit on, like, heavier topics. There was a couple of things that surprised me. I didn't know anything going into the game, which I think was the best way to go into it. But I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed exploring the town. It was a really visually beautiful game. Not terribly long, and that's okay. Not every game has to be very long. I would say Life is Strange True Colors is probably like a B tier game. It's a story-driven game where all you have to do is make choices, right? So it's not going to be overly complicated, and that's still okay. Simple games are fun. I enjoyed Life is Strange True Colors a lot more than I thought I was going to. So I would say Life is Strange True Colors is a B tier game, meaning that I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I would say it's not like a overly involved game. It's not like an RPG or something. Alright, next on my list is Spiderman. Now, I played this earlier in the year, and it was one of those games that I'd, like, started, put down, and then, like, came back to. And I'm really glad that I did, because I feel like the story of Peter Parker in this game was interesting enough to keep me hooked throughout the game. The fights throughout, the hand-to-hand combat being my favorite with the different villains that you run into. I enjoyed the story thoroughly. I liked that there was this kind of twist where somebody that you, who in theory should be a really good guy, ends up being the like main protagonist. And so it was a fun experience to finally be able to play as Spider-Man. I think the way he was really intended, to be able to just swing through the city, have these different missions, being able to have these random events happen through town where you can help save people. I would say some of the collectibles are a little bit tedious, but I think it makes it a little bit fun for people who like to complete games. That's not me personally, but I did have a lot of fun with the game. This is, I think, easily an A-tier game. Not God tier for me. I did thoroughly enjoy my time with Spider-Man, but I would say I try to preserve those S-tier games for something that I just like. A game that I just couldn't stop thinking about. And I thoroughly enjoyed Spider-Man. I didn't like the Mary Jane missions, but it sounds like I'm not really alone on that one. That most people, it seems like they didn't like that. It was pretty boring. I could have done without those. But for the most part, I was invested in Peter Parker's story. And although I'm having trouble remembering everything because I haven't played it in a little while, it was just a solid game. And I can only imagine when it first came out for the PlayStation 4 that people were just completely blown away. I played it later on in its life cycle, so I think I didn't get to appreciate it as much as other people did, but seriously, A-tier easy. Next on my list, and this one was a surprise for me, No More Heroes 2 on the Nintendo Switch. It was a limited run release, which I happened to just find in a Best Buy while I was living in Florida. And I don't know why, but I just randomly popped it into my Switch one day, and I beat it completely in one sitting. I think it was like an 8-hour game. This game is a perfect homage to that like early 2000s humor. It's a game where you play as an assassin and you have to build your way up through like the list of people in order to be the number one again. And the game does not take itself seriously at all. It's got some interesting battle mechanics, very interesting storyline, very quirky, very funny. The mini games are really weird, where you like try to get your cat to lose weight by exercising it and limiting its food. You can have little side jobs, which end up being like these little old school like video game types. It was a very interesting game. I loved my time with it. Again, it was only like, what? I said like 8 hours. It was a very simple game, but a ton of fun. The last boss, I won't spoil it for people who haven't played it yet, was very interesting. I'm not gonna lie. With all of that in mind, I think I have No More Heroes 2 as a B-tier game. Tons of fun. Good quality game. Glad I got a Switch port. I think playing it on the Wii would have been a little interesting. I did buy the first one, so I'm gonna have to play that on the Wii to figure out if I like that one as well. But the No More Heroes franchise definitely has its hooks on me, but B tier. Alright, next on my list is Road 96. I was kind of itching to play some indie titles, so I ended up downloading Road 96. I'm not a big digital fan, but this game was really interesting. You play as multiple teenagers trying to run away and make it across the border due to a dictator who's in charge of like politics, and your decisions basically influence who wins the next election. It goes a little bit deeper than that. There's a lot of, I would say, some serious topics that get touched on, but a lot of interesting characters. My favorite being the truck driver that you run into. But the game is very interesting because you can mess up, you can lose your characters, and so it does put a particular weight onto your gameplay on, you know, whether you want to make particular decisions or not, or make particular risks. But you meet a lot of really cool characters that you run into periodically throughout your gameplay, and even though you're playing as new characters, to you, they are familiar. I would not say this game is something I would go out and recommend to other people, so this is going to be my first C-tier list game. It's not a bad game. It's not. It is another decision-based game, and I would say it's really interesting. It's a good play. I would recommend it to you guys if you like decision-based games. But it just wasn't there for me to be like, wow, that was like a really solid game. I did enjoy my time with it, but C tier for that one. Next up on my list, I set out to beat my first GTA game. I was so excited, and I decided to play Grand Theft Auto 5 because it is a game I had dabbled in before. I had restarted it numerous times, and I figured it was time to finally finish it. You play as 3 different characters throughout the game, which makes it very interesting because when you get the characters together, your position on what you're doing during the mission will change. You know, one guy's good at shooting, one guy's good at like flying, one guy's good at driving. And so throughout the missions, you're not always just playing that one character. So it puts a lot of dimension to the different missions that you play. I thoroughly enjoyed this game. To the point when it was finished, I couldn't stop messing around in the world, trying to do just little things here and there. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I loved Grand Theft Auto 5. I liked the story. I liked the characters. I even like Trevor. He's a complete psychopath, and that's what makes him so charming. He does this, like, completely off-the-wall things throughout the game, and it just keeps it completely entertaining. Michael, you kind of sympathize with the guy sometimes, but he's also an asshole, so there's that. And then you got Franklin, who thinks he's basically above the people he's around, and he's trying to be the richest criminal, I guess, that you can be. But this game is so diverse between the missions, the free roaming, earning money, buying houses, being able to interact with different characters and go on, like with Michael, he can go on dates with his wife. I mean, this game has so many things to do. It can keep you busy for a very long time. I do not play Grand Theft Auto Online. I don't intend to, but I had a lot of fun with this game. I can't even form my thoughts because there's just so many things you can do in the game that is just so much fun, like customizing your vehicles, doing races. A lot of the storyline or a lot of the missions, they have a lot of humor in them, and it's a funny game. Don't take it seriously. I wholeheartedly recommend playing Grand Theft Auto 5 if you've never completed it. The story is great. S tier for me. It's my first S tier. I loved this game through and through. I would totally enjoy playing it through again, even if it was recently. I loved it. It was so much fun. Let me know in the comments down below if you had just as much fun with Grand Theft Auto 5. I think I'd like to try to play through San Andreas because I thought that was my favorite Grand Theft Auto game, but I've never beaten it, so that might be my next one. Next on my list is River City Girls. I played that on the Switch, and I did play it co-op with my best friend while we were visiting her in North Dakota. I had a ton of fun with this game, and obviously the co-op is gonna be what makes this game so special to me because I gotta play it completely through with a friend. The game is funny. You're 2 girls looking for your boyfriends, and there's a twist later on, and I won't spoil it for you, but I had a lot of fun with it, with the different weapons, exploring the different maps. The story is not deep at all. It's a beat 'em up. But you have a lot of fun with it. The music's fun. The characters always have something fun to say. And I would say I would put it at an A tier because of how much I enjoyed it with my friend. And again, the music was great. I think a lot of people did truly enjoy River City Girls, and I have not played the second one, but I'd like to wait until I can play it co-op before I try to give that one a shot. But A tier for River City Girls. Next up on my list is Yakuza Kiwami 2. This is a remaster? Or a remake. It's a remake of Yakuza 2 on the PlayStation 2, ported to the PlayStation 4 with updated graphics. I did enjoy the game. I would say the ending is what really picked it up for me. I would say if you played Yakuza 0 and Kiwami, it's kind of just a continuation of things that you've already experienced. It's not got a lot of new things going for it, and honestly, it didn't really feel like a very long game. And that's not a bad thing. I would say I enjoyed Yakuza 0 a lot more than I did Kiwami 1 and 2. They are PlayStation 2 games though, so that might be why they're so short. But I would say the ending for me it wasn't emotional, but I was very invested in it, and I really liked how it ended. And I'm excited to play the third one, and I think in the next year I'd like to play through 3, possibly even 4. But with all of that being said, I mean, you do a lot of the typical things. You do a lot of side stuff. You can play darts, you can play pool, you can do UFO catchers, arcade machines. You know, it's Yakuza. It's kind of a little bit more of the same old thing. So for me, this one's gonna be B tier. I love the Yakuza series a lot, trust me. But I would say from the 3 titles I've played to completion, B tier. Alright, Sayonara Wild Hearts. This was a rhythm-based game, and it seemed like, from what I could tell, it was about a breakup. Now, I feel really bad, because I know that RNG Gamer really loved this game, and I think this game spoke to a lot of people. I just wasn't one of them. It was fun learning that Queen Latifah voiced the main lady in this game, and I love rhythm games. So you basically have to play the game to the beat of the music, and the music is very interesting to listen to. You should definitely listen to the soundtrack. But for me, I just wasn't that invested in the game. I did beat it. It wasn't very long. It is definitely a game meant to replay the levels to try to get higher scores. So for me, unfortunately, this is a D tier game, and I'm saying that with like an asterisk. I'm not saying it's a terrible game. I'm not saying don't play it. I'm just saying for me personally, it wasn't a game that I was truly invested in, and I would say unless you find that deepness in the game, I can't recommend it. Alright, now that I've sufficiently pissed somebody off, my next one is A Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. For the Nintendo 3DS. It's my first handheld, and I think the only handheld I beat this year. And this game, I'm not gonna lie, it completely blew me out of the water. It was so much fun. It had so much charm. It's supposed to be like a sequel to A Link to the Past, and I see it. It's the same map, you know, it's, I guess, a continuation, but it's got its own charm. It's a really fun game. If you've never played it, I wholeheartedly recommend it. With the 3D mechanic of being able to blend into walls, sometimes it's hard to remember. Like, sometimes I forget that you could do that, and you could blend into walls and use that to your advantage to try to figure out a puzzle or a dungeon. But as somebody who wasn't always a big fan of the traditional Zelda games, I would say that this game really did hook me from the beginning, and I enjoyed it through and through. I don't know if I can think of a particular spot that I really disliked. So this game is going into my A tier category. This game is one I thoroughly enjoyed through and through. Not God tier for me. It was a pretty short game, and you know, for Zelda games, it definitely would crack my top 5, that's for sure. But A tier is where this one's gonna be. This next one started because Unnecessarily Ramblings was talking to Mundane Designs about a game. And this game was Sleeping Dogs. And I ended up playing Sleeping Dogs, the definitive edition for the PlayStation 4. And I truly loved every minute of it. This game was amazing. The map isn't very big in the game, but it's so full of life. The missions are so much fun. The people in the towns are interactive. There's racing. You eventually get like a supercar. You're a undercover police officer trying to infiltrate basically the real world version of the triads. The Scion E. I probably said that a little weird. But in the game, you get to play both cop missions and your gang missions. And when you're playing these missions, you kind of have to balance the two. You have to, if you do particular things like hit somebody or damage property, it takes points away from your cop points. But if you do some like pretty gnarly attacks, or you're really vicious or brutal, then your gangster one goes up. And so for me, my most favorite part of the game was the environmental attacks. It was very interesting, very unique, where you got to interact with your environment and brutally, like, basically murder some people with different things like shoving them into fans or speakers or things like that. The characters are very lively, they're not relatable, but I would say you're invested in them. Like, there's particular characters in this game that I was starting to grow onto them, and then something happened, and I was like, seriously, guys, you went through all of this just to make me feel remorse for these people. And the storyline is just, it's so good. I would say the story and the gameplay in this, for me, trumped Grand Theft Auto 5. So that obviously makes it an S tier game for me. Next on my list, another Spider-Man game, Spider-Man Miles Morales. Now, I ended up getting this game just offhandedly at a discount. It's not a terribly long game, and to me, it looks like it's kind of that in-between game where it's right after Spider-Man, and it's kind of teeing you up for Spider-Man 2, because it delves more into Miles Morales' character and his development as Spider-Man as well. I enjoyed the game way more than I thought I was going to. I really did. I enjoyed the missions. It was almost like a bite-sized version of Spider-Man, so it's a lot of the same stuff, with just a little bit of a different storyline. Honestly, I did like Miles' character. I was honestly surprised. I was ready to go into it thinking it was going to be this, like, mediocre title. Now, a lot of people were really upset when they bought the game because you were paying this, like, full price tag for, like, essentially almost a glorified DLC, which I understand why people were upset about that. I never would I didn't, and I wouldn't have paid full price for this game. But for the size of the game alone, I believe I put this one in a B tier. And it's not because I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed the game thoroughly. If you like Spider-Man, I think you're truly going to like Miles Morales. I like the visuals and the story. And it makes you learn a little bit more about Miles and appreciate him a little bit more. In the first game, you don't really get to interact with him as much, so his development really shines in this game, and I think it's definitely worth a playthrough if you like any of the Spider-Man games, especially if you're going to play Spider-Man 2, which I have yet to play, but I'm hoping in the next year I do. But B tier for Spider-Man, Miles Morales. I'm going to be honest, this next one, I didn't actually think I was going to beat the game. I beat Mario RPG on the Nintendo Switch. Not an overly challenging game, but I got annoyed in the forest where you can constantly get, like, poisoned, where the town's getting, like, darts thrown into it. The visuals are awesome. The cutscenes are immaculate. I can only imagine people who played through the original, like, just loving seeing these characters have new life breathed into them and these awesome graphics. Obviously, the story isn't, like, overly involved, but it gives you a break from the typical Mario. Square Enix and Nintendo getting together back in the day must have blown people's minds, and the fact that they could make this remake happen is just awesome. But Smitty is who you're going after. He's taken over. I'm not gonna lie, the entire time I thought Smitty was the sword. Regardless, I had fun playing the game. It was pretty easy once I got past that, like, poison forest area. I enjoyed playing as Bowser. I think my main team, I liked having Princess Peach as my healer, and then Bowser and the doll. I don't remember his name, but I would have him and the doll switch back and forth, and then Mario is my main protagonist. But it was a solid RPG, an easy one. Definitely, I would say an introductory RPG. I'm getting a little bit more into them as I go through my backlog, so I guess if you have RPGs that you think I should be playing, let me know in the comments down below. Obviously, Chrono Trigger's on that list, and so I gotta get to that eventually. So with Mario RPG as a great game, I personally would put it as a B-tier game. Graphics were amazing. The lines were funny. They were funny. But for me personally, I don't think it, like, blew me out of the water. So Mario RPG is in the B-tier category for me, and I'm sure that's gonna piss a lot of people off. The only other game I beat in one sitting, Detroit Become Human. I love saying Detroit Becoming Human, which is kind of fitting. It's another choice-based game about AI robots and their revolution to try to fight for their rights, I guess. I was really invested in this game. My favorite character by far is Connor. For sure, I'd love to meet the voice actor someday and have him sign something. I enjoyed the game thoroughly. I like that you played through 3 main characters, which would be Kara, Marcus, and then Connor. And you got Connor, who's the cop, Marcus, who basically ends up being, like, at the forefront of the revolution, and then you've got Kara, who's kind of fostering that more, like, emotional side of it by her trying to take care of a young girl. The game was by far my favorite choice-based game I've ever played. Ever. I loved the story, I loved the development, and the amount of paths that you can take this game. I mean, the replay value is, like, unfathomable. I don't know if I will ever see all the endings without watching them on YouTube. 110% recommend this game. By far, hands down, if I could only recommend one one choice-based game, it would 100% would be Detroit Become Human. They did a really good job on touching on AI and what really makes humans human. Now, I'm not putting this in my S tier. It's pretty darn close, but I would put it in my A tier, and that's just because it is a choice-based game. So you can only get so much depth from it, but it is a very emotional game, I guess. Like, it's really good about touching on those serious subjects. But A tier for Detroit Become Human. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I played Alice Madness Returns, the first game I beat this year. And I was saying I was a little rough on the game, and I think it's because it was the first game I had to essentially force myself to beat, because I'm not used to trying to beat a game. I just want to enjoy it when I enjoy it, and that's it. But I've developed the taste for beating games this year. 17 may not be a lot to you, but it was to me. This game is... The reason I was hard on it at first is because I felt like it was repetitive, and the enemy variety wasn't as much as I'd like. It is a PS3 title, so it's older, but not that old. You play Alice Madness Returns for the story. For the artwork, it's like Tim Burton meets Alice. It's a horror land where Alice is falling back into madness, and she has to dig her way out and basically recover her memories. And at the end, there's a twist that I'm 100% not going to spoil for you, because I do think you should play this game. I do think I was a little too hard on it at the beginning, and I'm not just saying that for Jen. I really do think it was a fun game. It had puzzles, it had interesting combat, upgrades, but if you like stories with a psychological twist to it, with a decent ending, this is 100% a game that I would recommend. Again, it does get a little repetitive, but it's a fun environment to be in, to look around, the different levels, what's going to happen next, and again, trying to get out of madness. It's a good game. It's good. So for me, Alice Madness Returns, I believe I still stuck it in the C category. Not my favorite. I wouldn't put it with the other games I enjoyed, like Mario RPG, more than I enjoyed Alice. So C, not a bad game at all. If you like Alice, horror, puzzles, and plot twist, it's your game. For me, it didn't blow me out of the water. I wonder if I tried playing it again now that I've gotten through wanting to beat games, if I would have enjoyed it more and viewed it more as a fun experience versus more of a chore. But you never know. So for now, Alice Madness Returns, C. Next on my list is Mario Wonder for the Nintendo Switch. This game was really interesting because it's one of those games for me that once you play it, you kind of don't go back to it. So I feel like the replayability, it wasn't a game that was like pulling me back. And that's fine. I had fun with it while I was playing it. The Wonder Flower basically transformed the level into this like chaotic, random mess. Random for the player, but has a theme sticking to like the level. So it was very much like very minimum moments of like, what the hell is going on? It was very interesting, super creative. I'm so glad they made this game. I'm glad they tried something different again. I had plenty of fun with Mario Wonder. I liked the level designs. I thought some of it was challenging, but I feel like for the most part I breezed through it. But I'm also somebody who loves platformers, who's been playing Mario forever, so that could just be a product of the types of games that I like to play. But the game was very fun. It was visually beautiful. I loved it. It was great. It was a good, solid Mario game. Now, was it an A tier or an S tier Mario game for me? No, it wasn't. I did like it. I loved it. I just didn't love it that much. So for me, it's another B tier game. Solid title. Definitely should play it through at least once. I had a lot of fun. I played it solo. I don't know if it's good as a co-op game, but I didn't enjoy it as much as like Mario 3D World, Super Mario World, Mario 3. Like, I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed those games. So for me, Mario Wonder, B. Very last on my list, I didn't do these in any particular order. This is just kind of how they fell onto the tier grid, is Sea of Stars. I was so eager to play this game, and I didn't buy it from the get-go because it was digital only, and I really wanted to wait for a physical copy. And when it finally came out, I bought it for the PlayStation 5, and I enjoyed my time with it. As somebody who doesn't play a lot of RPGs, I think this one will be special for me for a long time. Not because I thought it was like an overly like epic RPG, but because it was one of the, I guess, fresh new experiences for me as somebody who really doesn't play them all that often. Because this game, it seemed like it was paying a lot of homage to older RPGs, and I appreciated that. I loved the art style. I always teased with my husband when I was playing Sea of Stars that it very much had a lot of and then moments.
And then...
I refuse to play your Chinese food mind games.
And then...
No! No and then!
And then...
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 No, no and then!
And then...
You're really starting to piss me off lately.
Because a lot of the times through the game, you would think that you were getting towards the end. I think it happened at least 2 times to me where I was like, okay, I've got to be getting towards the end. And then it was like, and then this happened, and you had to keep going, and I don't tear up a lot with games, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played it, but there is something that happens in the game that I was actually pretty invested, and I was really sad that it happened. I shed a tear. The game usually doesn't make me feel that way, and that's really hard for me, because I don't always get emotionally invested in games, and I loved the music, I liked the combat system, the monsters and the bosses that you fight were creative. It's a good, solid RPG, and that's coming from somebody who doesn't play a lot of them, so I'm not really the authority on that, but I totally recommend Sea of Stars wholeheartedly. I think initially I put this game in my B tier category. You could probably float it between an A and a B. It's a really solid game. You should definitely play if you haven't played it. I think most people have, just because of the reputation it has, but that was a solid game for me this year. And for the record, Sea of Stars is going to be an A tier game. I think I was debating for a little bit on B or A, but given how it made me feel and how much I enjoyed it just in general, and how special it is to me, A tier. Alright, you guys, that's the wrap up for 2024. Those are the 17 games I beat this year. What do you think of my list? I feel like I hit a lot of heavy hitter games, and I want to keep that trend going. Now, I didn't play a lot of retro games. I did try playing Yoshi's Story. Not Yoshi's Story, it was Yoshi's Island, and the game's kind of a drag. I'm sorry. I'll probably try to get back to it. I think next year I'd like to have a little bit more variety, a little bit more handhelds. I've been looking at some GBA titles that I'm interested in playing, maybe some Wario 4, stuff like that. So I think I want to try to have a little bit more variety. I've been living on my PS5 a lot this year, playing PS4 titles and PS5 titles, kind of ignoring most of my other consoles. I recently just started Mass Effect on the Xbox, so maybe that will be one I'm able to beat. I already like it. I have the Legendary Edition for the Xbox One, and I think it looks good for an older game. So let me know in the comments down below what games you think you're going to be playing next year, what your favorite game on my list was. Do you agree with my ranking? Do you totally hate me now and want to unsubscribe? Let me know. But thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a fun 2024, and I'm excited to make videos next year and keep chatting with you guys in the comments. Thank you so much, and don't forget, a pixelated world awaits.
Samanthaazira, queen of the game zone, her realm, her throne, every console known, pixelated princess, conquering unknown, in this digital age, her talents are shown, from Minecraft games to Halo skies, watch her conquer, no surprise, game of grand dynamic wise, skill unlocked, no disguise, guys, joystick Jedi with moves unreal.